Welcome everyone to the Vitality Equation, exploring research in health and well-being one paper at a time. Today we're diving into a fascinating piece about cellular mechanics and its potential, perhaps surprising, implications for our lives. Ready to jump in?
Definitely. I'm always up for uncovering the connections between the micro and the macro. This paper, titled The Ubiquitin Protease ubiquitin, suppresses the formation of translocations at CDC13 binding sites. Sounds pretty technical at first glance, but I think we can break it down and find some useful takeaways. So, what's the initial impression?
Right, it's dense. But the key is that they're looking at how cells maintain genomic stability, specifically preventing unwanted chromosomal translocations. And these translocations, when they do happen, can lead to some serious problems. We're talking cancer, developmental issues, the works. It's really the body's way of checking in on itself.
Exactly. So to put it in simpler terms, it's like the cell has a system to make sure its DNA doesn't get scrambled when it's copying itself. And this ubiquitin protein is a key player in that system. It's like a quality control inspector at a factory, making sure everything is assembled correctly. And if I'm understanding correctly, the CDC13 binding sites are basically the areas where things are most likely to go wrong, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding too. The CDC13 binding sites are like vulnerable spots on the chromosomes, and UBI10 is there to protect them. Think of it like reinforcing a weak point in a structure. So the paper is focusing on how UBI10 does this reinforcement and what happens when it's not working properly.
And the implication of that is that if you don't have proper protection, those weak points are more likely to break and then incorrectly reattach to the wrong place, hence the translocation, which, as we said, leads to problems. Now, what's interesting to me is how this cellular quality control mechanism might have parallels in cognitive function.
Well, I like where you're going with this. Tell me more, because my brain is already firing off. What parallels are you thinking about specifically?
Well, in CBT, we often talk about identifying and correcting cognitive distortions, those faulty thinking patterns that can lead to negative emotions and behaviors. You could think of these distortions as being like translocations in our thought processes. They're incorrect connections that lead to dysfunction. This UBI10, in a way, could be a metaphor for those cognitive processes that keep our thinking straight.
Okay, I see the connection. So, if UB10 is like a quality control inspector for DNA replication, then CBT techniques could be seen as quality control inspectors for our thought processes. They help us identify and correct errors in our thinking before they lead to bigger problems.
Yes, and what if we consider the role of mindfulness in this framework? Mindfulness for me is all about observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment. It's about noticing when our thoughts are starting to go astray to, translocate, and then gently guiding them back to the present moment. So mindfulness could be seen as a way to strengthen our cognitive ubiquitin, making us less prone to those cognitive translocations.
That's a great analogy. It adds another layer. You're not just correcting errors after they happen, you're preventing them from happening in the first place. It's like building a stronger foundation so the errors are less likely to occur. And I think the key is the early detection of these cognitive distortions. The sooner you catch them, the easier they are to correct, just like with these cellular translocations.
This is really getting my mind going. Now, from an exercise and sleep perspective, I'm thinking about how these factors might influence our cellular repair mechanisms. We know that sleep is crucial for cellular regeneration and repair. So, could poor sleep habits be weakening our UBI10, making us more vulnerable to DNA damage and ultimately increasing the risk of translocations?
That's a very good point. We're all about lifestyle improvements here. So yes, what you eat, how you sleep, and whether you exercise are all critical factors in whether the cellular repair mechanisms are working at their optimum or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the same could be said for stress. Chronic stress is known to have a negative impact on our overall health, including our immune system and cellular function. So, could chronic stress also be weakening our UBI10, making us more vulnerable to DNA damage? It's all interconnected.
Definitely. Stress management isn't just about avoiding stressors. It's about developing coping mechanisms that can help us navigate triggers and maintain healthy habits. It's fascinating how early experiences can affect how we react to substances. I remember reading that early life stress makes you more sensitive to alcohol. Maybe incorporating mindfulness and meditation practices could help me build resilience to those triggers.
That's a really interesting point, Jesus. So thinking about exercise, could certain types of training be more effective at promoting cellular repair than others? For instance, would high-intensity interval training, with its periods of intense stress followed by recovery, have a different impact on our up T10 than steady state cardio or resistance training? We know resistance training builds muscle, but does it also strengthen these cellular repair mechanisms?
These are great questions. It highlights how much we don't know. But even acknowledging that ignorance is a step forward. From a cognitive perspective, I'm wondering if there are specific CBT techniques that could be tailored to address the underlying cognitive vulnerabilities that might make someone more susceptible to these kinds of cellular damage. Like, if someone has a tendency towards rumination or catastrophizing, could that be contributing to chronic stress and, in turn, weakening their ubiquitin?
That's a really interesting idea, Otto. I'm thinking about how mindfulness and meditation could be used to interrupt those patterns of rumination and catastrophizing. By cultivating a greater awareness of our thoughts and feelings, we can learn to recognize when we're getting caught up in these negative thought loops and then choose to redirect our attention. Like the paper said, it's about suppressing the formation of those damaging translocations.
And from a sleep perspective, I'm wondering if there are specific sleep hygiene practices that could be particularly beneficial for promoting cellular repair. For example, we know that melatonin is important for regulating our sleep-wake cycle, but it also has antioxidant properties. So, could optimizing melatonin production through good sleep habits help protect our cells from damage and support our ubiquitin?
It's such a cool idea. Thinking back to the research, this paper focused on the ubiquitin protein and its role in preventing translocations at CDC13 binding sites. But what about other proteins and cellular mechanisms involved in DNA repair? Are there other quality control inspectors that we should be aware of? And how do they all interact with each other?
Yeah, it's like a whole team working together to keep everything running smoothly. And I'm curious about how the cellular mechanisms might vary from person to person. Are some people genetically predisposed to have a stronger ubiquitin than others? And if so, can we influence that through lifestyle choices?
That's a great question. And I'm also wondering about the role of aging in all of this. As we get older, our cellular repair mechanisms tend to become less efficient. So can we slow down that decline through exercise, sleep, and other healthy habits? Can we essentially train our ubiquitin to stay strong as we age?
And what about the impact of environmental factors? Are there certain toxins or pollutants that can damage our DNA and weaken our ubiquitin? And if so, how can we protect ourselves from those exposures?
These are all really important questions that warrant further investigation. It's clear that this research has opened up a whole new avenue for understanding the complex interplay between our genes, our environment, and our lifestyle choices. If early life stress makes me more sensitive to alcohol, or if maybe incorporating mindfulness and meditation practices could help me build resilience to those triggers.
Absolutely. And I think the key takeaway is that we're not just passive recipients of our genetic destiny. We have the power to influence our health and well-being through the choices we make every day. It's not just about exercising better, it's about healing and rebuilding.
Exactly. This research highlights the importance of taking a proactive approach to our health, both physically and mentally. By focusing on things like stress management, cognitive restructuring, exercise, and sleep, we can strengthen our cellular repair mechanisms and protect ourselves from disease. Learning about the microenvironmental factors needed for successful skeletal muscle tissue engineering could provide key insights into the mechanisms that drive muscle growth and repair. This knowledge might eventually inform optimized sleep and recovery protocols, crucial.
So let's think about future research directions based on our conversation. From my perspective, I'd love to see more studies exploring the impact of different meditation techniques on cellular repair mechanisms. Can we actually measure changes in ubiquitin activity or DNA damage in people who practice mindfulness regularly? What kind of microenvironments for meditation could be replicated and measured in relation to the growth of the tissue? If I can design a culture system for skeletal muscle tissue, maybe I can figure out a better way to grow healthy habits. Maybe the process of nurturing the growth of muscle tissues can be mirrored to nurture habits. This research could unlock some lifestyle growth hacks.
I'm interested in seeing more research on the link between cognitive distortions and cellular damage. Can we identify specific cognitive profiles that are associated with increased risk of DNA damage? And can we develop targeted CBT interventions to address those vulnerabilities? The technical precision required in designing the microenvironment for muscle tissue engineering seems highly relevant to the granular level of cognitive restructuring in CBT. Can this precision, this focused attention, be a key element for optimizing patient outcomes in a clinical setting? I'm fascinated by the implications for personalized CBT strategies. Could we eventually use biological markers like the BRIT1MCP H1 function to identify individuals most likely to respond to specific CBT techniques? This could revolutionize our approach to mental health.
And I'd like to see more research on the effects of different exercise modalities on cellular repair. Are there specific types of exercise that are particularly beneficial for promoting DNA repair? And can we develop personalized exercise prescriptions based on an individual's genetic profile and cellular function? Understanding how the BRIT1MCP H1G2M checkpoint affects cellular regeneration processes is really intriguing. Maybe there are ways to translate this knowledge into sleep optimization and recovery strategies, specifically regarding muscle tissue repair. More research is needed on how sleep and cellular processes intersect. I wonder how incorporating exercise routines that incorporate elements of a G2M checkpoints function, such as focused muscle control and recovery phases, might influence cell cycle regulation in the body at a cellular level. Could this help promote better muscle repair and growth? This could be a key component in a holistic approach to exercise.
Excellent points all around. This has been a really enlightening discussion. It's amazing how seemingly abstract scientific research can have such profound implications for our everyday lives. It's about understanding how to carefully create the right conditions for something to flourish. This principle of meticulous, controlled environments could easily be applied to my life. It's a meditation on cultivating positive habits, one controlled environment at a time. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks for joining us on the Vitality Equation.
Thanks for having me. And remember, small changes can make a big difference in the long run. Prioritize your sleep, move your body, and nurture your mind. Until next time.
Indeed. Stay curious, keep learning, and take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time on the Vitality Equation,